Page 55, medical record. Recorded August 14, 1933. Number 16. Boy, 6 years old. Pale, petite little guy, not big for his age. He is quieter, paler, eats less well, vomits a lot. His mother, who visits him at end of October, finds him less alert than a month before.
Patient 16. My grandfather. My grandfather, who I hardly got to know, but whose story I will try to tell.
In the time of your grandfather, there was not a treatment. You had to rest, you had to give good food to the patients, and food and milk and rest. And it was awful, I think.
You don't like using new types of fabric, though? You prefer using old?
Yes, that's a hobby.
Why is that?
Why? I like to make it special. There is no second of this.
Do you think I'm kind of like a weaver with this story?
Yes. Yes, and you do it with old material. So you need much imagination to understand more than is said.
This story begins in Friesland in 1933, in the small village of A. Of all the buildings in this town, the most meaningful to me is this gas station. Before it was a gas station, it was a garage, and before that, a school. The school where my grandfather's teacher infected his class with tuberculosis. My grandfather was 6 years old.
I still know it. I was walking down the street, I got so tired in my chest, and I kept complaining about it. But between them, others already had been diagnosed with it. And that was it. 20 of us from the same school.
Being diagnosed with tuberculosis meant that my grandfather and many of his classmates were sent nearly 100 miles away from their family to Sanatorium Sonnenbank. Of all the buildings my grandfather spent time in, it's potentially his most traumatic that's still standing. But even this building is a rebuild, an echo of the past. But of course, Sonnenbank was more than just its buildings. It was the doctors and nurses who provided the care.
Oh yeah, she was a nurse, and from 32 till 1946, she was a directrice.
So she would have been here when my grandfather was here?
Yes, she was here all the time. Yes. I think that every day they went to all patients, a lot of patients, and they talked with them. I think they know all the patients that were in the sanatorium at that moment, I think, yes.
The nurse buried here did know my grandfather. On her holiday in Belgium, she returned with a gift for him, a toy train. I'd like to think each nurse helped the children feel less alone.
Some nurses were kind, were mothers for the children, but not all. Not all nurses are the same. So, and not every woman is motherly. And maybe they didn't understand what it meant for the children to be so far away. They were left alone. I have heard from one lady who saw one of the family once a year. And that in that age, that's awful. Mostly the family did not come very often. And when they came, then all the children knew, oh, tomorrow, then they come. And all windows were open and the bus came, and then that's something for me. They were so glad that finally they saw their father or mother and all what they had missed.
It's hard to think of him being alone for that long and not seeing.
Yes. In that age.
Yeah.
It is not the time to be without parents. But it was best for the child. And that was the decision.
It's impossible for me to know exactly how he felt in those years. But as I weave these pieces, I can't help but believe it impacted his life in ways I'll never know. But if you ask people like Dr. Abo Tielstra, it was simply another chapter in a life filled with challenges.
I think if you had lived here, you never had done this.
You don't think so?
No.
Why is that?
Well, it was so close. And your grandfather moved and so far away. This was another world, another life. And you felt, I think you never felt totally normally there. You always stayed a little bit a stranger. That are the most bad years. I think worse than the sanatorium years.
Perhaps his first years in America were harder than his time in the sanatorium. His time in the sanatorium wasn't the only difficult time in his life. He lived through the invasion and occupation of his home during World War II. He immigrated to a new home on his own, and he buried his only 2 sons. And yet, this is the story I choose to tell. Do you think it's weird that I'm so interested in this story?
I think that's love. And you have not told him enough. He was no more. But you should have talked with him. You should have given him love and be glad with him and asking him and why and how. And you can say he has left you in the sanatorium. And he did not come to visit you.
I'll never perfectly capture my grandfather's experience all those years ago, but by weaving together his past, he's given me a gift. I have a story to tell.
Oh, thank you. You're going to help them open it?
Who's it from, Dad? Who's it from?
Your grandpa from Ann.